Hey everyone, we are live today with Alan Proethus of GXC. Alan, how are you?
Well, wonderful, wonderful. Thanks for having me, Evan.
Thanks for being here. It's been a little while since we last met at IT Expo, and you and the team have been very busy. Um, Maybe introduce briefly yourself, your background. You've been in wireless for as long as I have, so I really look forward to this chat. And a quick word about your mission at GXC.
Yeah, who would have thought those Radio Shack walkie-talkies all those years ago would influence and made a private 5G networks? But yeah, I've been in the mobile business forever. Before joining GXC last summer as CEO, been involved in the space, everything from the IoT side. I was the founding president of North America for Sigfox and built a network covering 70 million people. But before that, among other things, spent 7 years at HP, where my last role was leading business development and strategy for mobile. So, been working with operators and customers around the world on mobile topics for quite some time.
Indeed, we're going to dive in. Let me show the audience a quick video that might provide some context and a little bit of education for background purposes. Let's add it to the stream and have a watch.
Great.
We all have them. Hard to reach places where your enterprise network doesn't cover and where devices simply cannot reliably connect to the network. What if you could reach those locations, eliminate dropped connections, improve your network security while having full ownership of your critical data? Current wireless networks cause endless headaches, but network ownership and access to reliable, secure communications doesn't need to be difficult or expensive. That's where GXC's private 5G network comes in. You, the enterprise, can have your own cellular network. We know what you're thinking. Configuring a private 5G network? That's a big undertaking. Not with GXC. No more complicated installations and difficult to manage networks. We offer a fully integrated solution that works out of the box. There's no need for you to hunt your own core, radio access network, or SIM card. It comes auto-provisioned, so it just works. Setup is simple. Our mesh node allows you to connect individual radio nodes, your own towers, over the air. No need for wiring or digging channels for fibers. Simply configure our nodes throughout any size area, even hard-to-reach locations, and ta-da! You've created an enterprise network without the overhead of infrastructure. Users easily connect by scanning a QR code. Plus, Spectrum access is free because our solution utilizes CBRS. Benefits of private 5G networks are immediate. As an augmentation to existing networks, device connections are assured, and data is prioritized to critical devices. You'll no longer hear about dropped connections or lost information. Most importantly, security is built into the network, has benefits over other wireless protocols, and easily integrates to the whole network. Data management is mission critical for company success. As the enterprise owner, you have access to your data 100% of the time, and GXC solution provides ways to manage it. You can host and manage applications for communications, warehousing and supply chain, customer engagement, and many more. Additionally, AI and machine learning can be implemented to optimize end-to-end operations. With GXC's private network, possibilities are endless. CIOs of major enterprises already use their digital transformation budgets to implement their own private enterprise networks. The best part? It's a fast and scalable solution. Step into the future by proofing your network infrastructure. Schedule a demo today to learn how GXC can transform your enterprise.
Wow, that's such an exciting solution. Tell us about the genesis and your journey here with private 5G at GXC.
Sure. After watching the clip together, I feel like I'm on a late night show asked to talk about my latest movie. Um, but this is stuff that's been in the works for a long time, and I think it's a natural evolution of enterprise tech. In that, to geek out for just a second, if you go back, my goodness, it's probably 8, 9, 10 years ago, we had that thing called TV white space. Remember,
Mhm.
the FCC was trying to say, hey, there's all the spectrum people don't need, and maybe businesses can use it. And they realized early on that the way they tried to do it, where they had spectrum, nobody wanted it. As much as I love the Dakotas, wasn't really a big demand. And when you went to cities where you really needed it, you really didn't have it. And I think I would think of what happened at least in the U.S. market in the last 3 or 4 years of the government saying, okay, here's 150 megahertz of spectrum that anybody can use for LTE or 5G. And I always say, think about it like Wi-Fi. You go to buy Wi-Fi for your home or office. You don't call the FCC up and say, hey, I got my Wi-Fi going here. Can I get some spectrum? Everybody uses this shared spectrum, and you can use it if you play by the rules. And that's really the approach that's happened with this chunk of spectrum in the US, that's really ignited so much activity in private networks. But I would also say, because we're doing more and more internationally, that internationally, different countries, different regions have different approaches, but they're all waking up to the fact they need some way to easily grant the spectrum for enterprise to implement these private networks. It's just a matter of the technique they use to do so. So it's something that they say the overnight success after 10 years, right?
I love it. I love it. And you're really trying to put the easy button on top of these 5G private networks. Describe that, because there's a lot of options for wireless technology. I have a mesh network here at home, um, and I'm a pretty technical guy, but it wasn't easy to set up, to say the least. Let me just tell you that. So, how can we make this technology more accessible to more businesses?
Well, it's funny, I remember some statistics from a decade ago. The return rate on home Wi-Fi was somewhere between 25 and 40%,
Wow.
with no problem found. And it wasn't about the tech; it was about the experience of getting it going. And
Hmm.
and I think most technology goes through that curve. In the early stage, it's a lot of plumbing, right? And while there's some people that enjoy the plumbing, and you do learn from doing it, you really only extract value from a technology when you apply it to a business problem. And I think what we're working on now with private cellular networks really originated from the telco world. And I think we've taken a very different approach from some others in that when something starts in telco, you tend to talk about it in telco terms. Like, for instance, we're going to have a new video hitting, which really doesn't mention the words like core. That's a very telco thing. If you want enterprises to really get value out of it quickly, you must approach it not just from their language, but from their architecture, from their perspective. And so rather than having people trying to become a little telco and have to stick many, many things together, or Evan, I think I made this joke before to you, maybe, that it's sort of like saying your house is down at Lowe's, you just have to put it together. You really don't get the benefit of living there very easily. And so we've tried to sort of have it pre-assembled the way you would buy enterprise Wi-Fi, frankly, where you don't really care about the details, but you can have in a very, very short amount of time a very secure, easily deployable, cost-effective network that allows you to control your data. And really, it's about that easy button. So you don't worry about the plumbing so much. You worry about applying it to your business and getting value out of
Yeah, and I think plumbing might kind of degrade the technology that you've built, because it is pretty unique among private cellular services. Maybe geek out a little bit on the tech and the architecture and the intellectual property behind a GXC. I found that pretty interesting.
Well, thanks. And I discovered this plumbing gets really, really complex plumbing. Um, but and gold pipes and the whole thing. But well, when you have a company that has quite a few PhDs walking around, our legacy was actually as a University of Texas spin out a number of years ago, and so really around interference cancellation. So um, what we do is not just provide a turnkey private network solution, but actually allow you to roll out this network with mesh technology. We're the only company in the world that has commercial cellular mesh technology. And so, what does that mean? You remember in the old days around your house before you had mesh Wi Fi, you had these repeaters, or you just had big chunks of your house that couldn't connect. And frankly, how do you live? How could you live without that in today's world? So we've done pretty much the same thing for cellular because of this heavy research background of the company, that you can connect part of your network up where you have backhaul, and the rest of it you can extend and change and flex on the fly with our mesh nodes. And so there's a lot of situations where not only is it cost prohibitive to run fiber for backhaul, but it would be very disruptive to your business operations. Imagine a port, for instance, or a 24/7 warehouse, or we have other customers that have these industrial campuses for manufacturing where they may use different areas out there at different times for excess storage inventory, prepping things, where just being able to plug something in where there's power for coverage is a game changer for these operations.
That's so exciting. It said that, the business of America is business, and business is, given the millions of businesses that could potentially access your technology, how do you go to market? How do you get this in the hands of all those CIOs and CTOs and warehouses and hospitals and stadiums? It's a pretty big space.
Yeah, it is. It is. And so, really, we're never going to boil the whole ocean by ourselves. And
Mhm.
that's why we're developing a very robust network of partners and channels. Really, they're specialists and quite often already do business with the markets that would benefit from this technology. And so, for them, it's really just an incremental thing they're doing with the customer. They already are experts on the customer's environment. And frankly, they add a lot of value around it. So, from a GXC perspective, we're trying to be the best advanced connectivity platform in the world. And then what our partners do is really provide everything from the site surveys to the implementation, installation, the first two levels of support in terms of ongoing operation. There's a day zero and then a day one issue of people forget it's you need to maintain these things. You have to integrate them with existing enterprise systems. So it's really a way for our partners to do what they do best, and for us to do what we do best. And at the end, doing it like that really benefits the end customer.
Oh, totally. Total win-win. You mentioned international. I know the excitement around private 5G is growing around the world. Tell us about that and your deployments outside the US.
Sure. Right now, we're just getting ready for those deployments. But one of the nice things about our technology is, while in the U.S. we're focusing on that shared band that anybody can use, that's around 3.5 to 3.7 gigahertz. Really, we're pretty friendly with anything below 6 gigahertz, and so which pretty much covers anywhere you go in the world. So sometimes it might take a little tweak here and there, but generally speaking, we've been asked by some very large strategic customers. Leading the charge is probably the smart agriculture space, where they have big operations in Europe and South America. In fact, there's areas in South America, I tell you from experience and other things I've worked on, where you might have hundreds of miles with a cellular network.
Wow.
And this farm equipment is becoming really these massive edge compute platforms generating mass amounts of data. And so being able to collect all this up easily is very important. So it's really about sitting down in these meetings we're having with our customers and channels to say, okay, let's map out the schedule, let's map out the spectrum map for those areas, and really figure out how to support them, because big companies, it really doesn't benefit them to do it just for one place if they're a bigger place. It's really, how do you get this? If it's a game changer, why wouldn't you do it everywhere? And then how do we support that everywhere along the way? So we're very excited about it because the benefits are just becoming clear to the market. The other thing I'll mention is that we're very spoiled in America that a lot of times too, our services we get here are less expensive than a lot of the world. And when you
Mm.
look at just the amount of data being generated by companies that could touch this network, much of which, by the way, isn't particularly valuable. You have to sort through it to figure out where the value is. To put this on a public network can often bankrupt you.
Mm.
And the idea that you can figure out what's important, and then if you want to go to the public network, that's perfectly fine. But why load the public network with 99.999% of your data may not be stuff you want to keep anyway. You're really paying for stuff you don't need. And so it's a very cost effective way to do that sort on your own network first, and then go to the public network as necessary.
Such an interesting insight. I hadn't thought of that. So, what are our good friends, the carriers, thinking about private 5G and GXC? I imagine you're more of a friend than anything else in helping drive enterprise 5G adoption, something which is, a little bit slow to materialize.
Yeah. It's funny. We look at it as a very complementary
Mm.
potential partner set. Um, Frankly, in my humble opinion, and having spent a lifetime working with operators around the world, I think they approach the 5G market really from an internal operational efficiency perspective, that
Mhm.
running a 5G network is much less expensive, much more spectrum efficient than other technologies, which is makes a lot of sense. That's why they give you all these free phones, right? But once you get past that, if I were to say to you, what can you do today, Evan, with your public network 5G phone that you could not do on LTE? You may come up with something, maybe, but you'd be hard pressed, and I bet you
Mhm.
99 out of 100 people couldn't give you an answer.
Mhm.
And so, I think the challenge for the public network operators is really how to show value beyond their own benefits from these networks. So, what can you do now that you couldn't do before for whether it's consumers or business? And so, we look at them as a very complementary potential channel, but frankly, we see more engagement with enterprise technology companies right now, simply because they're coming at it more from a solution mindset than the traditional, especially US operator would come at it. I think it's a little bit different in Europe and other places where they have more of a legacy of a more solution approach. I would say, though, at the same time, I think more the North American market is waking up to how important this is. And rather than viewing it as a threat, it's actually a strong complement, especially as we get more to neutral host models, where the big operators can sort of do what they do at stadiums, right? They use these private deployments to get coverage where they just wouldn't have it because, as I like to say, a warehouse is basically a Faraday cage with storage. And it doesn't matter how many sites you put around it, you're not going to have good coverage there. You're not going to have it with Wi-Fi. You need to do something else. And so I think they're coming around to how this is complementary and still getting their head around what the best way is to deal with it.
Well, super exciting. You've had a busy year. We're back in the real world with trade shows and events and speaking opportunities. You just came off of Mobile World Congress. What are you most excited about over the next weeks, months out in the field?
Well, it was great to be back in Barcelona. It feels, even though it's at 80,000 versus, I guess, 110 with the last pre-COVID, it still feels like it's back. And frankly, I'd be perfectly happy at that side. But I think the thing we're most excited about is really a couple things. One is the level of market engagement. We've been talking about private networks for some time. The hockey stick is just starting finally.
Hmm.
And I think as more and more implementations are documented publicly, I think people will really get more comfortable with how it can impact their business. The other thing that's happened recently is that just in the last couple of weeks, we were selected as one of only 7 companies in the NTIA 5G challenge here in the U.S. Only
Wow,
7 companies
congratulations.
for 5G O-RAN because it's such a strategic technology for the country. And in fact, we're the only company selected for competing in 2 different areas for this challenge. So that's happening over the next couple of months. And just yesterday, NTIA in the U.S. announced $1.5 billion to accelerate 5G O-RAN in the U.S. So that just was announced less than 24 hours ago, but it's really the exact stuff we've been doing in terms of we run the U.S. Navy's 5G lab in San
Hmm.
Diego. We are the network for the Linux Foundation 5G Blueprint, Super Blueprint. And so, while the commercial market is LTE focused today, it will start to get more 5G focused next year. And in the meantime, the US government is only 5G O-RAN. So we're able to serve both masters, shall we say. So we're very excited about that.
That's exciting indeed. Well, we may need another update in 30 or 60 days. There's just so much happening. In the meantime, spring has sprung here in Boston. Where are you based exactly, Alan? Besides an airplane seat, where is home
Yeah,
base?
it depends. Either an exit aisle seat, hopefully most of the time. But our company is based in beautiful Austin, Texas, where I spend most of my time. Spring is here in Austin. The monsoons have stopped, and so we can
Okay.
finally walk outside once in a while.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, enjoy. Thanks so much for joining and sharing the vision at GXC.
All
Look
right.
forward to
Thank you,
chatting
Evan.
soon. Thanks everyone for watching.